This is breaking news from ABC4.
2 houses burn after a plane crashes into a Weber County neighborhood. The map marks the spot. Rescuers on scene now at 2000 West, 4300 South, making sure people caught in the crash get out safely. Word from the scene at this hour is that everyone, both in the airplane and on the ground, has survived. ABC4 bringing you live team coverage now from the scene and beyond. Noah Bond with residents saying this is not the first time this has happened in their neighborhood. We begin with Kimberly HOUK with the latest. Kimberly, can you confirm, first of all, no fatalities in this incident?
I can confirm that, John. The people in these 2 homes you see behind me here where the plane crashed into did make it safely out of their homes. And there are still firefighters on the scene. They're cleaning up this mess, and they're also around in case any of the hot spots flare back up again. Now, Ogden-Hinckley Airport is just right down this road, and that is where the pilot was trying to land. And witnesses in this neighborhood tell me that after the crash, they found the pilot just lying out here in the middle of the road. Shooting flames.
Their flames are at least, I would say, probably about 50 feet in the air.
And the rising clouds of billowing black smoke could be seen through the densely thick fog, evidence left behind by a small plane that fell into 2 homes in this Roy neighborhood.
Loud crash, a boom that just shook the whole house, and then an orange ball of fire into the sky.
There is no plane. There's parts laying everywhere. He was laying in the road.
Okay.
Because of the flames and the sparks shooting out from the pine tree area, we moved him further across the street.
Several rushed to help the pilot.
We talked to him. He was coming flying back from Lake Powell. Asked him if he remembered coming in for a landing. He says he doesn't. He kind of almost like he lost his short-term memory, had all his long-term. He knew his wife, he knew his daughter.
Yeah, I saw him loading him into the ambulance, and he looked pretty badly burned. His hands and his face.
Breaking glass and gallons of flowing water helped firefighters knock down the flames within an hour.
Very scary. It's to a point where I have 3 children, and they're dramatized about everything.
But fortunately,
it's a miracle.
No one inside of the 2 homes was harmed.
Obviously, God had his hand in it, and he was watching out for us.
And the only lights you can see in this neighborhood are coming from the emergency vehicles. That's because the power is out in this entire neighborhood. About 100 homes is what we speculate are people living without power at this time. And they're also speculating that the pilot probably clipped a power pole, and that's what sent him crashing into these 2 homes behind me here. And they speculate also that it's probably because of this dense, heavy fog. He probably did not see it. And again, he was the only one injured in all of this. At this time, his condition is not known. But remember, he was able to talk to people as they loaded him into the ambulance. Reporting live from Roy, I'm Kimberly HOUK for ABC4 News.
Nothing short of amazing. He survived and no one on the ground was harmed. Thank you, Kimberly. You know, they're calling this a recurring nightmare in this neighborhood. Not the first time a plane has crashed in this very spot. It happened just 5 years ago. Here are aerial shots of the crash scene then. In our team coverage tonight, ABC4's Noah Bond is in the very same neighborhood where it happened before. And they're saying they are angry about it, frustrated, and frightened. Noah, what are people living there saying about the 3rd time this has happened?
John, really, people are terrified, especially children, because of what happened. Let me tell you, this is roughly the 3rd plane crash in a 2-block area within the last 7 years, according to Roy Fire Chief John Ritchie and several neighbors I talked with. John, I asked if there's any direct connection between each of these crashes, and the fire chief, John Ritchie, says no, there's not. Let me tell you basically what happened at each crash. About 7 years ago, a plane with 4 people took off less than a quarter of a mile behind me, coming toward this direction. Now, that plane was overloaded. That's what the report said. That plane crashed into some trees next to an LDS church. All 4 people aboard that plane died. Now, 5 years ago, there was another plane which took off. This plane had 2 people on board. I understand it was an instructor and a student. This plane had some sort of engine problems. That plane flew. It sputtered, and the pilot couldn't pull up, so he crashed into a pole. He clipped the pole and hit 2 different homes, landing upside down on a second home. Now, as you can imagine, this is traumatizing for a lot of people, especially on this street where I'm standing.
I have 3 children, and they're dramatized about everything. They were here during the first time the plane went down back in 2005, and when this happened, they were just crying and crying, and we had to get them away. You know, they're at a friend's house right now.
Planes have no business flying over these houses when we're having crashes like this. I lived in this neighborhood my entire life. Never had a plane crash until the last 7 years. We lived just up the street. I grew up there, lived there 25 years. Not one plane crashed into these houses, and now we've had 3 in 7 years.
Obviously, very traumatizing, like you said, John, for the people here on this street. They're still trying to come to terms with what happened here tonight. A lot of the people have left. They don't have power here, and I don't know when they're going to come back. But again, John, no direct connection, officials say, between each of these 3 crashes, even though there were 3 here in the last 7 years. Reporting live in Roy, Utah, Noah Bond, ABC4 News.
All right, thank you, Noah. In fact, we've been trying to drill down on what the cause might be for tonight's crash. Initial reports have it that the plane went down because of heavy fog in the area. Joe Chevalier joins us, not only a meteorologist, but for 7 years, a U.S. Air Force forecaster. Joe, your job was, we want people at home to know, because this is reporting you're not going to get anywhere else, telling pilots whether they should or should not take off and land. What do the charts show us about whether or not this flight should have ever happened?
Yeah, John, a pilot and the forecaster for the pilot, if they have one, the civilians probably don't have one, but they usually look at 2 things. They look at the terminal forecast, which is the forecast specifically for that runway,
right,
that airport, and they also look at the observations before they take off.
Those observations are key to this.
Yeah, they're key. Let's take a look at what the conditions look like from the air. This picture was sent in from one of our viewers from Traverse Mountain. This is kind of what the valley looked like. Not only the fog, John, but we also had the haze in there, the inversions trapping all of this down in the low levels of the valley, and that's why we're seeing the fog. Now, if they looked at the observations this morning, then you could see, or this afternoon at 2:53, less than 1 mile of visibility. And the LIFR are the worst conditions. That means you have to rely on your instruments.
Gotcha.
The best conditions are visual flight rules.
Right.
And we didn't see that. But they did get better at around 5 o'clock, 4:53 p.m.
Sure.
We had marginal visual flight rules. So it got a lot worse, though, closer to the time of the accident.
Less than a mile visibility.
Less than a mile visibility.
Seeing about a quarter-mile visibility.
And fog. So visibility was about as bad as it could get, not only at this particular runway, but also nearby at Hill Air Force Base. It was 0.2 miles of visibility.
Right.
So visibility was awful, and if they were looking at now the forecast did say, for that runway, did have 4 miles of visibility forecast in there for the time. For this time of the landing.
So if you look at the forecast, it looks like it's doable, but if you look at the observation, that's another story.
It was worse, yes.
Gotcha, Joe. All right. Thank you for that insight, and we'll get your forecast a little bit later in this broadcast. Stay with ABC4 for continuing coverage of the plane crash in Roy.